Here's the thing that catches sharp engineers off guard. You'll read a scenario, and two of the four answers will both genuinely work. Both are valid architectures. And yet only one is correct, because a single word buried in the last sentence quietly decides it. Miss that word, and your experience actually works against you. Stack lessons here. Let's get you exam ready. At the end of this video, you'll know exactly what the Amazon Web Services Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam measures, how it's scored, and where to spend your study time for the biggest return. This is the orientation for the whole course, so we're setting the frame here, not teaching any single service yet. Before we go further, let's pin down 5 terms you'll hear throughout this course. A scaled score is reported from 100 to 1000. And it's adjusted for fairness across exam versions, so it's not a raw percentage. Compensatory scoring means only your overall total counts, so a strong area can offset a weak one. A qualifier is the decisive word in the last sentence. Like most cost-effective, that separates 2 valid answers into 1 correct answer. A distractor is a wrong option that Amazon Web Services designs to look plausible on purpose. And a pretest question is an unscored item mixed in invisibly that Amazon Web Services is trialing for future exams. So let's set the frame that everything in this course hangs on. This exam is not testing whether you can memorize feature lists or configure a service step by step. It's testing whether you can pick the one right service for a given constraint. You'll almost never be asked how to wire up a setting. You'll be asked which service fits a scenario and why the others don't. That single reframe changes how you should study, and it's why this course teaches decision rules instead of catalogs. Let's start with the raw mechanics. You get 65 scenarios in 130 minutes, which works out to about 2 minutes per question. That's your pacing budget. Now here's a detail that matters more than it looks. Only 50 of those questions actually count toward your score. The other 15 are unscored pretest items that Amazon Web Services is trialing, and they're mixed in invisibly. Questions come in 2 shapes: multiple choice with 1 correct answer of 4, and multiple response where you pick 2 or more from 5 or more. And it costs $150 to sit, which is a solid reason to know exactly what it measures before you book. The official exam guide is blunt about this. It says the exam includes 15 unscored questions that do not affect your score, and that these questions are not identified on the exam. So you have no way to know which ones count and which ones don't. The practical takeaway is simple. Treat all 65 as if every one of them matters, because for you, they effectively do. Here's a point people get wrong constantly. Your result comes back on a scaled range from 100 to 1000. And you pass at 720. That 720 is not 72% correct. Scaled scoring lets Amazon Web Services equate slightly different versions of the exam, so nobody gets an unfairly hard form. Don't walk in thinking you need to answer 72% of questions right. You need to clear the 720 standard, and the 2 aren't the same thing. Now this next quote is one of the most strategically useful lines in the whole exam guide. It says the exam uses a compensatory scoring model, which means you do not need to achieve a passing score in each section. You need to pass only the overall exam. Read that again because it changes how you allocate your time. There's no minimum you have to hit in each domain. It's your total that decides pass or fail. The cleanest way to picture compensatory scoring is a decathlon, not a series of pass-fail gates. A deaf athlete doesn't have to win every event. They just need the best total across all of them. A weak 100 meters can be offset by a strong javelin throw. Same idea here. A shaky domain won't sink you as long as your overall score clears 720. And that's exactly why you should weight your study time by how big each domain is, rather than trying to perfect all 4 equally. One honest caveat though, security is 30% of the exam, so while you can be weak somewhere, tanking security is nearly impossible to recover from. Weak is survivable, abandoned is not. Here's a rule you should burn into memory before exam day. An unanswered question is scored as wrong, and there is no penalty for guessing. So a blank is a guaranteed 0, while a guess is a coin flip with upside. That means you never, ever leave a question empty. If you're stuck, flag it, pick your best guess anyway, and move on. When time runs short, that habit alone protects points you'd otherwise throw away. Now, here's your study time allocation map. There are 4 domains. Design secure architectures is the heaviest at 30%. Design resilient architectures comes next at 26%. Design high-performing architectures is 24%. And design cost-optimized architectures is the lightest at 20%. Add up the top 2, and security plus resilient come to 56% of the scored content. More than half the points on this exam ride on just those 2 domains. So combine that with compensatory scoring, and the plan writes itself. Put the most hours where the most points are. There's a pattern worth calling out here. Security isn't just the heaviest domain, it's also the one candidates most often underestimate. People assume they already know it from their day jobs, then get surprised by how much the exam leans on identity and access management, encryption, and network controls. So this course front-loads security. When you sit down to study, this is the domain that earns the largest share of your hours. Let's go deeper on that core frame because it drives everything. The exam asks which service to choose under a given constraint. It rarely cares how you configure it, so it's a menu, not a cooking test. You need to know what each service is and who it's for, not the exact recipe. And here's a detail from the official guide. The wrong answers are deliberately plausible. Amazon Web Services designs distractors to look right to someone with incomplete knowledge. That means gut feel isn't enough. Your real job is to eliminate the options that don't fit, then let the constraint break the tie among what's left. So here's the reading method that makes this reliable in 4 steps. First, jump to the last sentence and find the qualifier, the decisive word like most cost-effective, least operational overhead, or lowest latency. Reading it first is like scanning the last line of a job posting that says must start Monday before you tailor your resume. It reframes how you read everything else. Second, build a quick checklist of the hard requirements, the things the solution absolutely must do. Third, eliminate any option that violates one of those capabilities. And fourth, take the qualifier and use it to break the tie among the survivors. Read it first, apply it last. This is the single insight that separates a pass from a near miss. On a lot of questions, 2 answers genuinely work. Both are valid. The qualifier is what turns 2 valid answers into 1 correct answer. If the scenario says most cost-effective, the pricier robust option loses even though it works. If it says lowest latency, the cheaper option loses. Same options, different qualifier, different winner. Train yourself to hunt for that word every single time. Now, here's something a little counterintuitive. Experience can actually work against you here, and it does so in 3 specific ways. The first is over-engineering, reaching for the enterprise-grade bulletproof option when the requirement never asked for it. The second is picking a technically valid but suboptimal service, an answer that works fine but isn't the best fit for the qualifier. And the third is confusing near identical pairs, services with similar names but opposite jobs. Notice the common thread. In production, your instinct is to build the most robust system possible. But here the correct answer is the one that matches the stated requirement exactly. No more and no less. Picture this. Someone asks you to hang 1 picture frame, and you show up with a full contractor's toolkit and a stud-finding laser level. It works. It's impressive, but it's not what was asked. On this exam, That overbuilt answer is the wrong answer. When two options both solve the problem, the more expensive, more complex one rarely wins. Pick the answer that meets this data requirement with the least unnecessary complexity, and let the rest of the toolkit stay in the truck. Let's look at the most famous of those near-identical pairs, because it snags even seasoned engineers. On the left, multi-Z, it's about survival. A synchronous standby copy gives you automatic failover and high availability within a region. But here's the part people miss. That standby is not readable. Think of it as a backup generator, silent until the power fails, then it takes over. You never plug your appliances into it day to day. On the right, read replicas. They're about growth. First, there are asynchronous copies that offload read traffic. That's what lets you scale a read-heavy workload. What they're not there for is failover. Think of them as extra checkout lanes to handle more customers. Multi-Z is survival, read replicas are growth, and the qualifier in the scenario tells you which one the question wants. Here's how this decision actually shows up on screen. The scenario says an RDS database is struggling under heavy read traffic. Option A tempts you to convert to multi-AZ and send reads to the standby. It sounds reasonable, and if you're skimming, you might grab it. But it fails for one concrete reason. The multi-AZ standby is not readable. You simply cannot serve read traffic from it. Option B, adding a read replica to offload those queries, is correct. The tell is right there in the scenario. Heavy read load. That points at a read replica every time. Same two services, opposite jobs, and the constraint is what decides. So here's how the course itself is built to match all of that. It starts with decision tree modules, organized around head-to-head choices like which compute or which database, rather than a service-by-service catalog. That mirrors Amazon Web Services' own published decision guides. Along the way, there are 3 retrieval checkpoints where you actively test yourself instead of just watching. Then a production patterns episode ties the decisions together the way real architectures do. Near the end, a full-time practice exam under real conditions. And finally, a night before cheat sheet for last-minute review. One important instruction: watch these in order. Each module builds on the one before it, so skipping around leaves gaps the later modules assume you've closed. Let me explain why those checkpoints matter so much. Watching a video builds recognition. It feels like learning, but recognition tends to evaporate the moment you're under exam pressure. Active retrieval, pulling the answer out of your own memory, builds recall, and recall is the skill the exam actually tests. It's the difference between learning a route by driving it yourself versus watching someone else drive it. Watching feels like you know the way. Driving from memory is what gets you there when the GPS is off. Spacing that practice over days rather than cramming makes the memory far more durable. And this isn't just my opinion. Research on learning science consistently shows the same thing. Quiz yourself, rebuild things from memory, don't just rewatch. So carry these 4 rules into every module ahead. First, decision rules beat feature lists, so always ask which service, not how to configure it. Second, weight your study time by domain, because security and resilient together are 56% of the exam. Third, always answer, because a blank is a guaranteed 0 and a guess has upside. And fourth, suppress that over-engineering instinct and match the qualifier with the least complexity that satisfies it. Keep those 4 in mind and the rest of this course will click. Now let's see how well you absorbed all of this with a quick quiz to close things out. All right, time to put your knowledge to the test. Question 1. During the exam, you hit a scenario you can't confidently answer and you're low on time. What's the correct move? Is it A, leave it blank so it doesn't count against you? B, skip it permanently and hope the unscored pretest set covers it? C, flag it, select your best guess, and move on? Or D, spend as long as it takes since every question is scored equally? Lock in your answer before I give it away. This one is C. Unanswered questions are scored as incorrect, and there's no penalty for guessing, so a blank is a guaranteed 0 while a guess has upside. Flag it, pick your best option, and keep moving. Question 2. You score well below passing on the cost-optimized domain, but strongly on the other 3. Under compensatory scoring, what does that mean for your result? A. You can still pass if your overall scaled score clears 720. B. You automatically fail because you missed a per domain minimum. C. Your score is capped at the weakest domain's percentage. Or D. You must retake only the cost-optimized section. Think about which constraint actually decides pass or fail. The right call here is A. There's no minimum you have to hit in any single domain. Only your overall total matters, so strength in 3 domains can offset one weak one, as long as you clear 720. Question 3. An RDS database serving a read-heavy reporting workload is overwhelmed by query volume. Which option best addresses the stated constraint? A. Enable multi-AZ and direct read queries to the standby instance. B. Add a read replica to offload the read queries. C. Take more frequent snapshots to reduce load. Or D. Increase the backup retention period. Run the survival versus growth rule before you answer. It has to be B, and here's why. The constraint is heavy read load, which means growth, which means a read replica. Option A fails for one concrete reason, because the multi-AZ standby simply isn't readable, so you can't send reads to it at all. Question 4. 2 options both technically satisfy the scenario, but one adds an enterprise-grade caching layer the requirements never mention. How should you choose? A. Pick the option with the caching layer since it improves performance. B. Pick whichever option is listed first. C. Pick the more expensive option because Amazon Web Services favors robust designs. Or D. Pick the option that meets the stated requirement with the least unnecessary complexity. Got your pick? Let's see. The answer is D. When 2 options both work, the overbuilt one adds complexity nobody asked for. Match the explicit requirement with the least unnecessary complexity and leave out value the scenario never requested. Question 5. You have limited study time and want the best chance of passing. How should you allocate it across the 4 domains? A. Wait time towards security and resilient, which together are 56% of the exam. B. Spend equal time on all 4 regardless of weight. C. Focus almost entirely on cost optimized since cost qualifiers are common. Or D. Skip security since real-world experience already covers it. Pause here if you want more time. The right call here is A. Because scoring is compensatory, you invest time proportional to domain weight. Security at 30% and resilient at 26% make up 56% of the exam, so that's where the most hours belong. And security is the domain candidates most underestimate, so don't skip it. Next up, we start the heaviest domain on the exam with IAM core, users, groups, roles, and the policy evaluation logic every other security topic depends on.